Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Manely Broncos Podcast. It is episode 2, or should we say, of us getting back together, right, Maddie? We are back together. And so one of the things we did, if you guys want to go back and listen to the Manely Broncos Podcast that we did, we uploaded it to Spreaker, and that was the August, make sure you look at it, it is the August 31st version, and that is one where we did sort of an evergreen topic. We talked about the draft, and we talked about potentially the expectations of it, and we just sort of just kind of took everything that we talked about previously and really just put it into one episode. And so today, we certainly will jam-pack a lot of different news topics for you, current news topics surrounding the Denver Broncos and the NFL. And I think first off, one of the things, Maddie, that I thought was absolutely cool was tonight, in particular, on the last day before I go back home to Castle Rock, PBS, or should we say Channel 6, or the Channel 9 news station, or just an affiliate of Channel 9 News, had decided, Maddie, to re-air Super Bowl 50, the game against the Carolina Panthers. So what is so it made me kind of think, and I know we went through and we created our rundown, but what was one of the things that was one of your fondest memories of that 2015 season? There are a bunch, you had the Bradley Roby fumble.
Oh my gosh!
The Aqib Talib
pick six against the Ravens.
Against the Ravens, ironically enough, with Joe Flacco throwing it. But what were some of your most fond memories of that 2015 season? Let alone, obviously, the game itself.
So that season was crazy, right? It felt like we were playing with house money kind of all year. Like nobody really gave us a chance, and it looked really rough with Peyton Manning throwing 5 interceptions against the Chiefs. Excuse me. So that was tough. But then Brock Osweiler came in and kind of righted the ship for a little while. And one of the biggest games of the season was also the coldest game of the season, the one that we played, New England Patriots, and C.J. Anderson broke loose for the game-clinching touchdown. It seemed like, they, like a shooter, right? Like when a shooter, like in basketball, just can't get a shot to fall. Like he's playing on a double rim, right? And he just can't break through. It's like somebody took the lid off with just that one play, and we were able to break through and get it done, because that was a rough game. That was a dogfight all game. Like nothing came easy for either team really until that play. So CJ, you are one of the biggest pieces of that season, and you don't get talked about enough because the defense was so incredibly dominant, and Peyton Manning was the quarterback of our team, so obviously he's going to get a lot of publicity too. But I was a believer in Brock Osweiler. I was dumb, I guess, in retrospect. They say hindsight's 50-50. I even got a Brock Osweiler jersey that is still hanging up in my closet, and I wear it proudly, because without Brock, we don't win Super Bowl 50. And so...
well, let me just phrase it this way then. Well, let me phrase it this way for you, Maddie, because a lot of people were throwing around the argument, and we'll get to our first big topic of the day here in just a little bit, but do they win Super Bowl 50 if Brock Osweiler starts?
I don't know. They might. I mean, the Panthers did get,
it was such a bizarre
turnovers
year
too. So the Panthers defense played pretty well in its own right. It's just Von Miller was a monster, and that had nothing to do with Osweiler or Manning.
Right. Well, and of course, one of the things that was one of the most memorable moments too, one of the billion memorable moments of that season was Peyton Manning's intentional or unintentional slide against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and him hitting Emmanuel Sanders to convert that first down. And obviously it became the talk of the town immediately following that game. But two of course, with that postseason run, you have DeMarcus Ware, who goes completely unnoticed with the talk of Von Miller, because if you look back and you look at the run of Von Miller, it was one of the most impressive postseason runs for a defensive player. And and then you factor in the team that they played, the quarterbacks they faced, and it just seemed like the way that the Broncos went about everything that they were doing, everything seemed to click and everything went in their favor. And yes, of course, there is potential luck probably in any sport, but at the same time, it still comes down to execution. And for the Broncos, a lot of the bounces and a lot of the execution went their way in 2015. And for DeMarcus Ware in particular, he goes completely unnoticed in that postseason run because, frankly, statistically, and obviously we all know the statistics don't tell the whole story. Sacks don't tell the whole story, especially with the Denver Broncos defense. Sacks do not tell the whole story of that Broncos defense. But anyway, that run from Ware, you could even argue, equaled or paralleled that of Von Miller.
Yeah, man, Ware was so good in that Super Bowl. He was all over the place, too. He was just, on some of those plays, he was just a little bit too slow. Just a little bit, because Vaughn was able to get there before him. And Malik Jackson was able to get to the ball a split second earlier than Ware could have. Like, I always think about that, and I'm glad that we scored the touchdown, but there's always going to be a big part of me that wishes that it was Ware that got the fumble in the end zone. Always.
It's funny. It was funny because I actually tweeted that today. As we were watching, then I saw the strip sack happen. Von Miller's most famous strip sack. Maybe the first famous strip sack of that game. And I just kind of said, still, where does that particular play rank for you guys? But for me, I said, Malik Jackson certainly scoring that touchdown was great for us in Broncos country because it was the first touchdown that was scored in Super Bowl 50. But still, low-key, I really wanted DeMarcus Ware, based on where he was and the point of his career, and especially the Broncos run and being in the Super Bowl, I really wanted DeMarcus Ware to score that touchdown, and it was just inches from scoring that touchdown. But anyway, I just thought I'd kind of bring that and kind of ask what your thoughts were a little bit about that, because here locally they were re-airing the Super Bowl 50 game against the Carolina Panthers, which of course they're still, to chagrin, and obviously this is a sidebar potentially for another day, but just but this is obviously a sidebar for another day. But the Broncos' 2015 defense still is being pushed by the wayside as far as not potentially being one of the best defenses of all time. So this now leads us, Maddie, into our top stories of the day. And
from defense then,
let's first talk
to defense now.
From defense then to defense now. And our first two topics that we should probably lead off with is the biggest potential news, and that is that Bradley Chubb is expected to be on a snap count. Is it a good thing for Bradley Chubb to be on a snap count? And by the way, this is all stemming from comments, and this is not the first time Fangio has ever said this. Vic Fangio has ever said this, that you have Chubb potentially, in his eyes, he's not 100%, but he's pretty darn close. I mean, he's been consistent in those comments that he's not 100%, but he's pretty darn close. And then obviously we get the comments that he could potentially be on a snap count. Where are you standing? And I'll give my thoughts too here, Maddie. But Where are your thoughts on Vic Fangio's comments that Bradley Chubb could potentially be on a snap count with his ACL injury? And this isn't obviously his first ACL injury, but just the news of him potentially being on a snap count.
Early in the season, right? So this is a different season than what we're used to. There is no preseason, right? So these players have only gotten to hit each other in practice. A lot of it's been very scripted. A lot of it's been very regimented. So that means it's been very controlled. You don't have complete control in a game-like scenario, even in the preseason. So these guys haven't really gotten into a game scenario yet where they're flying around at full speed hitting each other. That being said, the first couple of weeks for many of these teams are going to be a lot like that dress rehearsal. They haven't gotten a chance to figure out, the time for roster cuts and everything is now, but they haven't really gotten a chance to figure out what they have with their new additions on defense, with new schemes, with all those things, and be able to kind of experiment. I'm saying all that because Chubb's going to be out there. I mean, he's going to play snaps, but I think that it would be very short-sighted and ignorant of us to play him more snaps than needed to kind of get him up to football speed. If I have to think about it, if he's close to being 100%, but he's not there, some guys can go when they're not 100%, and that's fine. But there are some things, like a knee, that if you rush back too soon, it can have secondary effects and third effects even to impact that, right? You could tweak something else because you're compensating somewhere else. You're not as conditioned up into football shape, like all of these other things. Yes, we need Chubb out there. Yes, I think we do need him out there for week 1 against the Titans. But he's not going to be able to even go all the time. And you know what? You might see a lot of stars around the league actually not play their full complement of snaps in the first week or 2 of the season as everybody gets up to football speed and gets their conditioning there. So Von Miller, even though he looks incredible this offseason, you might even see him taking some plays to get a breather that you normally wouldn't, right? Probably not on third downs, but you might see him like on the sidelines on first down, maybe even second down, and then rotate back in. So it's going to be very interesting. There's a lot that the defensive coordinators and the coaching staff has to figure out with that rotation, especially with putting Chubb on a pitch count. But you can't rush this back. I don't want Chubb for week 1. I want Chubb for week 16 and 17 and the divisional round, right? When the Broncos get the 1 seed and we get the bye. Like, I want Chubb then. Like, games in September are important. They're not as important as the games in November and December.
And I feel exactly the same way because, again, we are in such a different time period. We are in such a different, in a season unlike any other. Mm-hmm. And I think for in particular Chubb and him recovering from an ACL injury, it's really important for fans to understand that Fangio's comments are in particular not a slight against Chubb. And for the Twitter people that are out there that are potential, as I will say, Twitter figure shock jocks that are just going to just type something for a potential shock factor, or make a potential statement like, well, what a bust of a pick, what a bust of a pick for the 5th overall selection. Like, are we really making this actual statement right now, or are you just doing this for potential viewership? I mean, and I think that for me, we just need to be really careful on those types of assessments because here we are, and the fact of the matter is Chubb absolutely needs to be on a snap count. And frankly, you put it best, Maddie. Bradley Chubb may not be the only person that we could actually see on a snap count. I do believe that, And it sort of leads into, obviously, what I've been saying and what both of us have been saying about the Week 1 matchup against Tennessee. It very well might be a preseason game. Like, because of the fact that there will be the fact there is no preseason games, the first few games, 1 and 2, could potentially be their only preseason games that they have. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see, the third string or fourth string guys, but what it means is we're going to just potentially see a boatload of rotational snaps happen for a lot of players. And so we'll still see Chubb, but we may not necessarily see the snap count that we would see with the Chubb, which is going to leave potential doors open for, guys like Malik Reed for more opportunities. And just these guys that really could use these reps against the Tennessee Titans team, or against against other opponents down the road. They could really use that. And so, in all honesty, giving Chubb even just a snap count this early will benefit even the younger guys or people that are below the starters even much more playing time and much more comfortability in a defense or in an offense, to where down the road, if they're in a meaningful game, Vic Fangio, a defensive-minded head coach, will see the play or impact that, say, a player like that made, and be like, you know what, I kind of trust him in this situation, kind of playing a little bit more of an analytical side of things, to where it's only going to just help out the depth of the football team that much better early on. I think just going about it that way. So, I mean, while, yes, it isn't necessarily a preseason, it is a regular season game. It counts. But the fact of the matter is, we are in such a weird year that, we very well might see, probably I would just say aside from the quarterback position, we will see a lot of times where players will sub in and out on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball, just for the sake of, to keep guys fresh for, weeks 12 and week 13 and 14, and just even in those meaningful games, to where you are fighting for a playoff berth, because we're in such a freaky 2020, as they say. Now, one of the moves that they did make during the week, Maddie, was one to backfill what we had talked about in our last podcast, that you guys can go listen to on Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, and basically any platform, any popular platform that you guys want to listen to the Manely Broncos Podcast, you guys can do that. One of the things we had talked about, right, was the huge blow of Justin Strnad, right? And what kind of gaping hole would that leave with the Broncos and especially with the middle of the field? While the potential signing of this particular player, while yes, he's probably not to that same par based on age and where he was at with his previous team, you go back and you look at the potential free agents that were available. I mean, who was available? I mean, really, there wasn't a whole lot of people available. I mean, they probably could have gone out and signed Darren Lee. They probably could have gone out and signed Nigel Bradham, who was just recently cut by the New Orleans Saints. But really, I mean, there really wasn't a whole lot of players out there. So what do? They go out and they sign a guy that actually was a former safety himself, in Mark Barron, an Alabama tie. So maybe subtly, and this is maybe my subtle comedy point of the day. Maybe this is just John Elway saying, see, I can sign another Alabama player. I'm kidding, but I mean, clearly they needed a need at inside linebacker. They needed a guy that could potentially cover linebackers, that can cover that can cover running backs, that can cover tight ends. They needed a guy like that. I don't know necessarily at this point in his career where he is specifically, but the fact of the matter is, and this is something that I think that Bronco fans need to take heed, because on the offensive side of the ball, it means the exact same way with Garrett Bowles at the left tackle position, or any potential player that you feel is incompetent right now. The fact that a Hall of Fame coach like Mike Munchak trusts Garrett Bowles to play that position successfully, and that Garrett Bowles trusts him to play that well, it means a great deal. And so for Vic Fangio, a guy that has coached players like Ray Lewis and
Patrick Willis,
the other Patrick Willis and Navarre Bowman, all these, Khalil Mack obviously is a pass rusher, but still qualifies as a linebacker position. All these guys that are star-studded, Pro Bowl caliber linebackers, for him to at least on the surface be okay enough to bring in a guy like a Mark Barron should tell Bronco fans enough that, maybe this could be the time when Fangio could get the most out of Mark Barron. He was able to play with Wade Phillips and with the Los Angeles Rams. So, you're looking at it, I think, from the standpoint. So, I think for the Broncos' sake, I think it was a very smart move for the sake of, that Vic Fangio potentially likes the talent that he sees with Mark Barron. And sorry to kind of take some of that time, Maddie, but go ahead on the potential signing of Mark Barron.
Yeah, so we definitely had a need, right? And Broncos country is not stupid. We went into this season thinking that maybe we need to upgrade our interior linebacking core. We definitely covering tight ends. Sua Cravens he wasn't the answer. We've had to put Kareem Jackson kind of all over the place and stuff, and that hasn't necessarily worked out because he just has so many other responsibilities. We have to play Simmons over the top and let him kind of ball hawk and kind of be, as a safety, right? A guy that doesn't let the play get behind him, and he certainly has the speed to make up for other deficiencies in the secondary. So all those other things are addressed, and we made a couple of other moves in that regard to kind of help shore some of that up. But Barron in the middle, if nothing else, he's a body that has speed. He's got size. He's played on some pretty good defenses in his entire career. The guy, he's cheap. It was pretty much free at this point. It wasn't a huge deal. It's not going to hurt us in the long term. So I think the Barron signing came out of nowhere. I didn't see anybody really on that until it happened. But things happen quick in the NFL. So I'm glad that we addressed that. I'm glad that we at least got somebody in there, because the plan was to have Shenaud, rock that out, but the wrist injury, putting him on the IR, that's obviously not a thing now. So that's a great signing. And then the other thing we did was we traded Issac Yiadom for a conditional 6th round pick. Conditional 7th.
I believe it was a 2021. I believe it was a 2021 conditional 7th round pick to the New York Giants.
Yes. And honestly, Yiadom didn't have a role. We've given him opportunities, and he just got picked on, and Fangio must not have appreciated the growth that he saw out of him. So we moved him on. Could say something about Bryce Callahan, that he really does look good, and he looks ready to go, and we're good depth wise. Bosby, that he looks good and ready to go depth wise. We have some guys to help round out our linebacking core alongside AJ Boye. But there's one more guy that seems to be making the rounds. It seems to be having some buzz. An undrafted rookie out of Wake Forest, Essang Bassey. What do you have to say about Bassey?
Well, I think it is interesting that the Denver Broncos in particular really liked the Wake Forest pool this year. We were just talking up Justin Shenaud, right, for the inside linebacker position. What school did he come from, Maddie? Yeah, Demon Deacons, he came from Wake Forest. And then they have a running back that is rumored to be competing with Royce Freeman for that other position, and that is Levante Bellamy. And so, I mean, clearly they liked what they saw, at least on the offensive and defensive side of the ball on Wake Forest. And that happens. You know, when you spend so much time studying film, you really like what you see out of certain players in one school and versus another. But as far as Essang Bassey, you're talking about another guy that was a captain of the Demon Deacons, from what I remember, and a guy that is he's athletic, he's twitchy, he clearly has enough tools that I think he could potentially make something work here. And I think that even too, those are the types of things that, especially in a COVID year, remember back when all the conversation was being had, Maddie, of, you know, where will people be, or where will rosters be, and how difficult will it be for those undrafted free agents to make an NFL roster? On the surface, it's a fair point because of everything that was certainly happening. But at the end of the day, it's still the coach's choice. It's still up to what he sees on the football field. It's still up to him to what he sees on the practice field. And right now, in just a short amount of time, he clearly liked what he saw at a Bassey in a short amount of time, way more than what he got out of Yiadom in the last year and a half, I should say, because now we're creeping on 2 years, but in a year and a half for Yiadom. And, you know, I think you put it best with Yiadom. For Yiadom, it just was an unfortunate thing. He has tools. I think he has plenty of good tools to where he could potentially work with safety and potentially even corner. So he's got some tools to work with. It's just one of those things. It's the hand that you're dealt. You know, it's just an unfortunate situation. He just didn't get better for the coaches and what they saw out of him, and so they decided to just give him some new scenery, trade him to the New York Giants, and maybe there was some connection with Shermer and potential people there with the Giants that they could be able to talk, you know, here and there of what they could potentially, or Shermer, what they potentially needed over there, because he was a former head coach over there with the Giants, so maybe they kind of helped him in that regard. But yeah, I think that for the Broncos, and especially with Bassey, you know, it definitely helps out. I think the fact that they really liked Bassey. Now, one player, I think one corner, it either helps and hurts for that cornerback position is Duke Dawson. That's one player that obviously we not talked about a whole lot, but you know, he's added the versatility and everything. What's your thoughts potentially about even it opening up a door for a Duke Dawson, a guy that's like a Kareem Jackson somewhat player to where he's a corner / safety?
Yeah, I mean, well, and he's a playmaker in college too, so we've seen that. The guy, he is a playmaker. At times isn't always so technically sound, but he's got all the athletic tools to be able to make up for that at times. Playing time tends to always help. Getting those actual game reps, and they're potentially there. Hopefully not a ton, because Callahan is good to go. And I think that Bosby could be that dude going forward. And we still don't know what we got out of our rookie corner out of Iowa. So you got to think that he's going to play a role on our defense too. But you need about 5 or 6 corners in this league, because guys get dinged up and you got to rotate guys out, and you got to have versatility. So if he can slide in the back, if we run 3 safeties at times, or whatever, you know, we end up doing, versatility is always great. And I think Fangio loves guys that can be multi-tools, that can move around in different places of the field, so that you're not tipping off what you're doing on defense to the offense. So it's harder to diagnose.
Where does that leave you? And this kind of leads us into our next topic, we kind of made it all secondary focused, right? in our show today, we made it all back end defense, right, Maddie? With our show today with Issac Yiadom and Essang Bassey, and we let off with Chubb, of course, at the top and with Super Bowl 50. But where does this leave you? Because with where we're at on this next segment, how many cornerbacks do you think Denver keeps? I mean, are we looking at 6? Are we looking at 7? Because if it opens the door still for a potential other signing, there's a player out there who had clearly put his name out there and clearly said publicly, no, yeah, I would love to see it happen, or something to that effect.
Yeah, you're talking about Prince Amukamura after getting released from the Raiders. I think, I mean, he's got familiarity with Fangio. It makes sense on that level. He would understand the scheme and be able to come in right away, so it doesn't hurt that he hasn't necessarily gotten the reps in practice and all that stuff. Like, the scheme's still going to be the scheme, so he'll be able to slide right in. I would say that could be an option, potentially. A lot of it matters, like, how many tight ends are we going to carry, right? We've got like what, 6 tight ends right now in that room, right? Like, that's a lot of guys.
Potentially 4 or 5 good tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, Jake, you got Butt there, kind of the forgotten man who seems to be really shining this offseason. Like, maybe it's finally all coming together for him. We got Albert O. We still have Fant. We signed Vanette. Like, that's 4 tight ends right there. I mean, that's, versatility in tight ends and guys that can go catch. Like, I get it. Like, scheme and play and field positioning and all that stuff matters on who you use and when you use them. But that's a lot. So, like, the more tight ends you carry, we don't have a fullback on the roster, right? Pretty sure we don't.
We do technically, but it's just the fullback tight end, of course, Andrew Beck. Right, and
so, like, is that going to stick? So, I mean, us not using a full-time fullback frees up another roster spot, which maybe feeds into the tight end, so it doesn't impact it. But, man, like, when you get down to the nitty-gritty, it's like you're one injury away from having to sign somebody to a position of need now because you had an injury, and then your depth elsewhere kind of goes, and you got to release guys. So if we're healthy, I'd say maybe bring them in and see, especially if there's a setback with Callahan or something. But we may actually be locked and ready to go in the secondary right now.
Well, and here's another point, too, is we're talking about Bassey. If they really believe in Bassey, what's so bad about bringing in a guy that, I mean, because clearly they've done it with Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay, right? We're not in the room every day, so we don't necessarily know where they actually are in terms of, do they firmly believe that Lindsay's the guy? Do they firmly believe that Melvin Gordon's the guy? But we all know the one prevailing thought in just any sport is that competition makes everybody better. So could we be looking at a scenario that they may love Bassey? And clearly, if you go and you read the tea leaves and the comments by Fangio, it certainly seemed like they love Bassey. So will it shock me that they don't sign Prince Amukamura? No, it would not shock me. But would it shock me if they sign Prince Amukamura? No, it wouldn't shock me. Because, whether they believe in Essang Bassey or not doesn't change the fact that they're bringing in a guy that can continue to make Bassey better. And so maybe the point of the signing of Prince Amukamura is to make Bassey just that much better, and just to drive him to be that much better, and to potentially confirm to the coaches where they are actually at with Bassey. And if they sign Prince, is that one final hurdle for Bassey to potentially make that 55 or 58-man roster, whatever the new roster size that they're doing now with COVID. I think it's 55, but to potentially clear that next hurdle for Bassey, to be like, okay, you know what? Okay, we brought in Prince, but he's really exceeded expectations beyond to where now he's even beat out one of my former corners in Prince Amukamura for that final spot.
Yeah, that's a theory. I think we kind of don't have a ton of time to figure that out now. Like, we've got a week and a half left before we actually kick off. If this was a traditional camp, if we had traditional preseason games, like, that theory definitely could hold true, because you see practice and then you see game film. The one issue, I guess, would be like who steals reps from who. And if you want Bassey to improve and you want him to grow and develop, you can only do that so much when you're not actually getting the reps yourself. So I think Amukamura could be a decent signing. And the thing to consider is COVID environment. It's always good to have those relationships in place in case of. And we have to designate somebody as a COVID and put them on the IR, and we free up a roster spot and we can go out and get somebody like maybe we bring in Prince if somebody contracts COVID or whatever, like that's always a possibility too. So it's not, that's a never say never thing at this point. But there is one guy who we can't bring in right now.
We thought we would. We thought we could. I know our friend of the podcast and our friend over there, Put on the Orange, he's been banging the table for this guy since the moment he's been a free agent.
Yeah, Logan Ryan. So the Titans, their defense is going to look a lot different this year. Maybe adding a star to it, but that they got rid of Logan Ryan and he ended up actually going to the Giants. Which is kind of weird. I don't know why. It just, the fit doesn't look right to me with him. But good signing for them. It was a reasonable deal. Kind of a prove it deal, which I think all parties can win if you get the right opportunity. And they might not actually be in that bad a game script all season, so you might have a chance to actually defend some passes and stuff, and that'd be good. And I think that sucks because maybe that's a missed opportunity. We had a lot of free money that we could use, not free necessarily, but available money. That's probably the better word usage that we can use after Juwan James opted out. As of right now, besides the signing of Mark Barron, it doesn't seem to be that we're going to use that money for anything this season, unless like we need to fill up depth because of an injury later. So maybe we're just saving that money and we're going to roll it, and then we'll figure out what we do with James in 2021. A couple of other signings going around the NFL, and then we could bring this back. Looks like Gordon is going to be reinstated, Josh Gordon, for the Seattle Seahawks. They are waiting for him to be reinstated, but they have re-signed him by all reports today. So they are running a three-headed monster at receiver there in Seattle. Very interesting for that. And I think it's good. It speaks to, one, it speaks to the culture that they have in Seattle. And then two, it speaks to just all the work that Gordon put in, building relationships and actually doing the job. So much so that they want him to come back and do the same job. So good on him for doing all that. And honestly, where we're at in society now, come on, NFL, like those policies are dumb. Let's give this guy a completely clean slate and let's move forward. My opinion. Another guy that just got a clean slate, Leonard Fournette, was released after his third season in Jacksonville 2 weeks prior to kickoff of this football season. Caught everybody by surprise. They were trying to shop him. Apparently they couldn't get a fourth or a fifth or a sixth or a seventh. They couldn't get anything. That's verbatim coming from management in Jacksonville. And where does he end up? Tampa Bay. And who do we play this season? Tampa Bay. So the guy that torched us for 200 yards on the ground last year in Mile High, or excuse me, I'm saying Mile High. Because, yeah. It's Mile High. Just not old Mile High. I was at that game. I got frustrated. Nice holding penalty that wasn't ever called. That long run should have never happened. We should have won that game. Anyway, I'm not bitter. But yes, by all accounts, statistically, he torched us last year. So it's going to be very interesting. This offense is going to look a little bit better than what Jacksonville rolled out last year. So it's going to be all hands on deck. Graham, for Predominantly Orange, pushed out an article talking about it. So go give that a read. But very interesting there. And that's pretty much it for the big signings. But there's one big guy out there. He's rumored to the Titans. He's rumored to the Saints. I think the report I read said that he was too expensive for the Seahawks. Do you want to get into him?
Well, so the thing even with Clowney is, that's a guy that more is a pipe dream.
Oh, my
gosh.
That
was a guy that I would have loved to see. Would have loved to have seen the Broncos, at least in both off seasons, kind of dip their toes a little bit in and just make their defense just absolutely nasty. Obviously, you'd have to make the schematics work on the defensive side, but as far as just really making it potentially happen, and for Clowney, the opportunity to work with a absolutely incredible defensive-minded head coach for what seemed like potentially the first of your career. It seemed like that would be kind of enticing. But clearly he wants to go to the Tennessee Titans, who is a pretty good defensive, coach with Mike Vrabel, and it seems like they're headed in the right direction with Mike Vrabel as the head coach. But it appears that way that he's going to the Titans, although obviously based on where we stand now, it appears that the New Orleans Saints have maybe a slight edge over the Titans if we're wanting to keep score or where we're at on the Clowney sweepstakes. But it seems like the Saints are slightly ahead on the Titans. So for the Broncos' sake, I guess that would be good news that the Saints are going to potentially win that bidding. But also on the Saints side of things, good on the Saints. Like, really, good on the Saints. If they feel comfortable that they want to go after Clowney, good on them, because they went out and they drafted Cesar Ruiz, a guy that could potentially anchor that that offensive line past the Breeze era, but that's still going all in and really helping out Breeze. Then they make a surprising signing and go out and get Emmanuel Sanders to help out and take pressure off of Michael Thomas. They go out and make even some more signings, and now you even add. You now potentially have the opportunity to add Clowney to that mix. They're going all in on Breeze. And obviously there was the rumors out there about Alvin Kamara and the contract dispute with Kamara, and that appears to have been fizzled rather quickly, and in fact it may even lead into a contract extension for the Saints. But even then, that's still going all in on it. That's still going all in on Breeze, and really building not just your core of the future, but the core to potentially win now. So really good on the Saints to go out and potentially even look at Clowney.
Yeah, it's definitely a pipe dream. I just think, like, with our offense, our ability to score points, our ability to put pressure on the other offense, like, can you imagine, like, 3rd down and 6, 3rd and 8, and you've got to deal with Jarrell Casey, like, like an Ajim,
Bradley Chubb
and Clowney and Von Miller, like, man, like, that's tough. That's tough. So I know it's a pipe dream. I get it. If it's a 1-year signing,
I know.
But, like, this is how I look at it, though. If you've got the money to spend and you can do it, Von Miller's not getting any younger. This might be the best Von Miller that we see for the rest of his career, in the shape that he's in and all of that, and he's making a ton of money. Yes, we're going to have to extend Chubb at some point in the near future. And we've got all these other guys that we're going to have to re-sign too. I get it. So rolling that money over could be used, well. But we got it now. if we want to make a run and see how, if we're serious about getting after Kansas City, if we're serious about stopping the bleeding, going up against Patrick Mahomes and company, killing us year in, year out lately, like, you go get an elite pass rusher, and then everybody can kind of be on a snap count, and you keep everybody fresh, and you always have two guys that can go murder, death, kill on the quarterback. I love it. I want that. I need that in my life.
Right? And, as we said earlier, we don't know schematically if it would fit, but, again, Vic Fangio's been in the league for, 30 to 40 years, at least of coaching experience. If he, or let alone Pat Shurmur, if he can't, on the offensive side of the ball, Pat Shurmur can't make all these weapons work, then unfortunately it never worked out. If Vic Fangio can't make all these defensive weapons and potentially work well, then, unfortunately it just could not work out. And so obviously I completely understand, is there a schematic fit potentially with Clowney? I get all that, but if you've had the amount of coaching experience and everything that Fangio's had, you can easily make it potentially work with Clowney, and you can even potentially make it work, because people always attribute that, well, what are you going to do with Chubb if you sign Clowney? You can make it work.
Well, let's be real. Just a prediction, looking at our team and looking at how much money people are making and looking at contracts. I don't want to say this, but like in 2 years, Von Miller might not be with us on our squad anymore, right? Like, that's a very real possibility. What does that look like for life after Von? So we're going to pay Chubb all this money. Yeah, like, who's taking the pressure off of Chubb at that point?
Well, and I think that maybe is that now going to be the goal of the Broncos? If they're doing such this massive overhaul on the offensive side of the ball, are we now doing this front face, like, opposite approach now, to where, okay, John Elway has now learned how to build a great defense, and now maybe we're getting to this point in time to where John Elway is now, okay, so I built this great defense. Well, let's see now if I can twist this a little bit now and get up with the times and maybe build the type of offense that could win us games currently right now in 2020 and beyond. Or, as they say with Drew Lock under center now, infinity and beyond. With Drew Lock Lightyear. But I mean, so I just think if they can get to that point, and maybe we're already at that point, the fact that they've hired Pat Shurmur and everything, and so the fact that there's a lot of offensive staff continuity. Maybe we're already at that point with the Broncos, and that's a sidebar for another day, obviously. But where are we with this Broncos team? Are we doing a complete opposite turnover now, to where what once was a defensive juggernaut at some point, and not to say that they are really stout defensively now, but are we looking at it from the point that we're going to start outscoring opponents like we do, like the Kansas City Chiefs in our own division?
Well, I mean, it's a lot easier on a defense when they know that the offense is going to be able to score more than 16 points, like week in and week out. Like, okay, like, I blew this assignment, that's fine. Like, it sucks. I don't want to not be perfect, but like, you got to have guys going 100%. Like, you have to have them going pedal to the metal and trying to make plays. And sometimes it's better to mess up big, right? Unless your name's Raheem Moore. Like, you got. I mean, especially for these young guys, right? Like, go make a play, go get a turnover. You get us 2 turnovers in this game. Our offense is going to be able to handle the rest. Like, do that. Okay, how do you do that? You get after the quarterback and put pressure, and then you have guys in the secondary just see ball, get ball, right? And you got to be able to have some synergy there. That's what, to bring it full circle, that's what made 2015's defense so special, was that Tom Brady had no time to throw the ball. He was getting killed up the middle. Malik Jackson was an absolute monster. Wolf was talking about eating children. Von Miller and Ware were playing with their hair on fire coming off the outside. Well, Ware didn't have a lot of hair, but you get what I mean. So it's like they're playing super aggressive getting after Brady. So he didn't have a lot of time. And then our secondary made plays all over the field. They made plays week in and week out. So it's like we need that synergy. We have studs at every level, right? We need those levels to work together. And the way that we were able to be so successful that year is we just had such overwhelming force getting after the quarterback always. Third down and long, it was like, okay, the quarterback's got to get rid of this ball in 2 seconds. If he's even got that kind of time. And we're able to get home only bringing 4 guys consistently, which allowed everybody else to just ball out in the second 2 layers of our defense. We need that synergy. So we're talking about a potential hole in the middle of our defense, right? We don't know what our inside linebacking core is going to look like. We have very unproven secondary. Bouye was a baller for 1 year in Jacksonville before he moved over to Houston and then got freed up. We don't necessarily know exactly what we have. We think we got a really good player there. Callahan was great in the slot, but he's been hurt. And then we've got a lot of youth there. So how can you help a young secondary? A secondary doesn't have a lot of time playing together. A secondary that doesn't have a lot of time playing recently. You help them out by going and getting the quarterback and not letting Patrick Mahomes do his taxes on the $1 billion that he's making and work his books there, in the pocket. Like, make the guy get off his spot. He can still beat us, but I'm just tired of seeing Mahomes pick us apart. I'm tired of seeing, Rivers didn't do it so much. Carr week 1 last year kind of bothered me a little bit, but get after the quarterback like that. We need another guy. I know I'm rambling here. We need another guy to get after the quarterback because we had four weeks where we didn't get a sack or an interception, or 3.5 weeks until the Jacksonville game. We don't have a lot of time to mess around, and Von Miller's not getting any younger. So if we have a chance to, even 1 year for $17 million or something, add Clowney, and we've got the money to do it, do it.
Yeah, and it's not a slight to potentially what our defense is, because I think our defense is really, really good right now still, but it's just when you have the opportunity to make your defense bad to good, or from good to great, and from great to elite in a matter of a signing, and to what Maddie said, and you have the money to do it, do it. So I mean, really, it's just that simple. And so yeah.
I hate clowns. I love Clowney. Period.
It's that's all right. With that, I'd say with that, well, let's go over to our final little tidbit, really small little tidbit. Obviously, it's 1 week from Houston to Kansas City. We just touched on Patrick Mahomes. Right? It's finally here, Maddie. We are literally here. We spent so much of the COVID quarantine. We spent so much of everything that went down, and just from February, basically from the minute the NFL Combine hit was right around where COVID was hitting, and then just ever since that point, it's like there's just been a bunch of bizarre things after another. But the one constant. Okay, we're going to do a little twist off of the movie Field of Dreams here. But the one constant through all the months of this year, the one constant had been NFL football. The one constant through all these months had been NFL football. Well, we're at that point now. The NFL draft is done. Free agency, miraculously, they were able to get it done with COVID and visits and signings. They were able to get it done. Training camp, they've finally been able to make it work. We got stadium sessions. We've got actual practices at the stadium. No fans. Am I bummed out about it? Absolutely. But they're able to make it work. Are we going to potentially see no fans in the stadium for an entire regular season? Yes, but they're going to make it work. But you know what? the fact of the matter is we're finally here. Like, we are finally now here, 1 week away from Houston and Kansas City, a rematch of the playoffs where Houston was up 24-0. I was excited. I was jumping out of my chair. I was ecstatic. I couldn't believe everything like this was happening. And then Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Sammy Watkins, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, and others decided to turn the lights on, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and then they were up before you could take a trip to the bathroom and come back, and then the Chiefs were up somehow. Like, that game got out of control so fast. I just say, like, I'm glad that football's coming back, but we're also going to be that much closer to no longer having to say defending champion Kansas City Chiefs. Because if we had never played another down of football again, like, the Chiefs just would have been champs forever, and that obviously is a nightmare. Like, that's the bad place. We had officially been in the upside down at that point, and so, like, that couldn't fly. So, really glad that we're going to get all that hoopla done. Great, you won a championship. Good job. You finally won the trophy that, is named after your owner. Like, good job. Way to go. Now let's move on. All right, now you're no longer champs anymore. It's not going to be the Raiders. It's not going to be the Chargers. So, like, if it's anybody but the Chiefs at this point, like, I'm Gucci. I obviously got money on the Broncos. I've got money on Drew Lock to win the MVP. So we'll see, but
we're starting over. I mean, basically what you're trying to say, we're starting over, Matty. I mean, once week 1 hits, we're starting.
Your record 0-0.
Last year never happened.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, you're starting over. So, last year, certainly, the Kansas City Chiefs, they had their year. But week 1 happens, it's time for 31 other teams to be like, no, this is our year. This is our year. And for the Broncos,
30 other teams.
It's time for them to, 30 other
Jacksonville's
teams.
Jacksonville's not doing that.
Yeah, true. Any team that is not visually and figuratively or reportedly tanking, they're not part of this conversation. But for the Broncos, you know what? This is it's time for them to just go into the locker room and be like, you know what? This is our year. And you know what? It is time for us to saddle up and win this thing this year with Drew Lock under center. And that should be their mantra. Time for them to saddle up and get this done. Get this Super Bowl done so that they can win a Super Bowl 5 years after winning Super Bowl 50. They could do that. Is that a lot of pressure? Absolutely. Is that a lot of amped up energy that I'm talking about right now? Yes. Is there a lot of potential expectations that I'm putting on them? Yes. But do I believe it? Yes. Do I think that they can do it? Yes. But am I talking potentially again as far as too much expectations? Still, yes. But I still believe in the Broncos. I still believe that they're a very good, competitive football team that can win 12 and potentially even compete. The key word is compete here. Compete for a first seed? Yes. I think they can do it.
Hey, our starting quarterback grew up a Chiefs fan. The Chiefs won the Super Bowl this year. I know dude ain't happy. But let's just... He is wearing the orange and blue, and he's saying, I put on for my city, and his city is Denver now. Like, that dude is ready to I see. Roll. He's locked and loaded.
He's locked and loaded. And to quote inadvertently Kyle Freeland's quote from the Colorado Rockies, pitcher for the Colorado Rockies, my city needed me, and I put them on my back because they needed me, or something like that. Like, it was something along those lines. The city needed me, and yeah, lock and load. This has been another episode of the Manely Broncos Podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember, you guys can actually listen to us over on the Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and a bunch of other. You can even catch us on YouTube as well. So please feel free to listen to us, and we also upload our podcast on Spreaker as well. So tune in to the Manely Broncos podcast, and our very next podcast is a special one. We're going to be joined by Mario Vitanzi of Vitanzi Therapy. So get ready to get well adjusted, Bronco fans, because we are going to be amped up like you can't believe. This dude brings so much energy to a podcast. So get ready, because we're going to be saddling up with a lot of energy on this next podcast.
Absolutely. I'm excited. You got to drink a pot of coffee before he comes on, just so you can keep up. But it's going to be dope. I'm really excited.
Oh, it's going to be great. I'm excited. So thank you guys again for tuning in to another episode of the Manely Broncos podcast. I am Cameron Parker. He is Matty Moles. You guys can catch Matty on Twitter at Matty Moles Pod, at myself at Cameron Parker PO. You can catch the Manely Broncos Twitter handle at Manely Broncos. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the show.
And as always, saddle up.